So you're in, or even if you can use their website to go say, I'm interested in bills about redistricting, and they'll, get all the bill numbers. And then you can, from what I understand from Ella Ennis, who's my legislative chairman, who is the most phenomenal human being on the planet when it comes to this, you can put in the bill numbers that you want to track. And then the website's supposed to send you an email that this bill is going to be heard on this day, et cetera, so that you can get in there to sign up, and that you can only sign up during like 10 to 3 on business days. And you have to sign up like 48 hours ahead and all that stuff. But there is a mechanism, from what I understand, I haven't tried it yet, but a mechanism that will alert you to what's happening with the bills. Unless, in case you don't have your very own Ella Ennis who tells you everything. But go ahead.
No, Dan, I think you're right. So they are trying to make it user friendly, although, signing up 48 hours in advance and only during weekdays and like those limited time frames, that makes it difficult for people, especially regular people, to know what they're doing. The lobbyists, they've all figured it out. And of course, the people who are supporting the bill with the delegates bringing them in, they figured it out. It's not that hard, but for those who want to testify against the bill, they just have to really pay attention, get in early. And you can talk to your own delegates and help if you're having a problem with the whole process. They can certainly, they should help you get in, depending who your delegates are.
Yes.
We should probably plan on maybe doing a tutorial, something we can share with the Women's Federation as to what the process is.
We already have, but
have you?
That with you, yes. We
okay.
Did a legislative. We did a Zoom workshop back on Monday night, in fact. That was all about how to sign up, and we walked everybody through the website, how to track bills, how to find bills, what the printouts mean. I mean, what's on the page, etc. So I can send you that link if you'd like.
Thank you very much. Once again, Women's Federation leading the way in Maryland, but that's a good thing. Thank you very much. Well, let's talk about some of the bills that folks will be concerned about. We've talked quite a bit about the new process. Front and center is going to be Kerwin and obviously, first of all, the override, but then also the mechanics of how do you pay for that, assuming it is overridden. What are you hearing? What are you hearing about the timeline for that?
So in the House, we are going to be voting on these veto overrides in early February. So we actually have time for people to get on board. Although the Senate, my understanding is they've already overridden a lot of the bills in the Senate. So really it's up to the House if we're going to be able to sustain those vetoes or not. And I have to say, I don't give much hope. If the state Senate has already overridden the vetoes, unfortunately, the House is probably going to go right along. They are actually, believe it or not, a little more reasonable than the House is. We're very, very liberal right now, just the way the House is drawn up. We lost many seats in the last election, and we're down to 40. 40 of us, 99, actually, 40 of us and 101 of them, to total of 141 delegates. So we're highly outnumbered, and it's going to be hard for us to sustain those vetoes. Kerwin, as you know, is just an albatross. It is so expensive. I believe it's like $2,500 per person, whether you're paying taxes or not, across the whole state. It's simply unaffordable. And Mark, you brought up a great point. How are they going to bring it in? They don't have to fund the whole thing this year once they pass the Kerwin bill by just overriding the governor's vetoes. I was actually hoping that they would pull back. We just had COVID. We're not doing very well financially as a state, and yet they went ahead and passed this huge spending bill that's going to necessitate a lot of tax increases. And so the question is, how soon are they going to make the spending occur? And then how are they going to pay for it? Like you asked, the only way to pay for it is by huge spending increases, by increasing our taxes.
So that is obviously a huge challenge, and I guess we do have some time to be able to make some noise about it. It's also worth pointing out, isn't it, it isn't just state spending, it's also county, local school district spending. And so the tax consequences will be coming not just from the state level, but also from the county level as well.
Yeah, Mark, you're exactly right. This is an unfunded mandate. The state's mandating that the counties spend a lot more money on education. And I just want to note too that it's nice to say that it's all education spending, but really this was a teachers union dream bill. This is not about helping our students, helping them do better. It's about paying the teachers a lot more money, and it's about increasing their credentialing, which sounds maybe good, but it's not, because all that does is keep good people out of the teaching profession. It really is a protection lobby for those folks. And if you want to come in, let's say you're a great teacher in Virginia, you want to come to Maryland, it's going to be very, very hard. You're going to have to pass all these new requirements to come to Maryland. That's not the way that we should be doing business, but unfortunately, that's what this bill did. Again, a teachers union dream bill, not helping the students, but costing us a fortune.
It's a huge challenge. Now, let's talk a little bit about COVID. Obviously, you would think because of COVID that perhaps people might put the pause button on something like that.
Right.
How is COVID affecting the budget, and how is that affecting what the legislature is looking at? Obviously, they get the budget from the governor, but what's the outlook?
So the governor just put forward his budget for this next year. Of course, it's increasing spending. It's a new record level for spending on education. And hopefully we don't have to do more than that because of Kerwin. But you know, the revenue is down from last year. We haven't been as hard hit as other states, and mostly that's because the federal government has so many workers right here in Maryland, whether that's in DC or St. Mary's County, you know, all over the state, we have government facilities. And so that's really protected the state of Maryland from the revenue really dropping. But it has dropped, and we need to live with that realization. Unfortunately, the budget the governor came forward with is actually spending more this year than last year. But just for everyone who's listening, I got to just make this point. The governor may not be as conservative in different areas as we'd all like, but the opponent was it Ben Jealous this time, and of course Brown before that. I mean, you had a total socialist that would have been our governor. I can't be more thankful to have Governor Hogan as our governor. You know, I served for 4 years under Governor O'Malley, and we had the highest tax increases that we'd ever had in the state. Spending was just out of control. People were leaving the state in droves. And that's what we had under Governor O'Malley. Governor Hogan is trying to maintain some balance and some order. Even these vetoes that he just did, including Second Amendment right vetoes, he's trying to work with both sides to help our state go in the right direction. So with that, you know, his budget does spend more than I'd like it to spend. However, it's not as much as if Ben Jealous was in there, and he isn't proposing any tax increases to fund his budget. So that's positive, and he hasn't all 4 years, not one tax increase, not one fee increase. That's been very encouraging.
And it's worth noting that there's a whole slew of potential tax increases that have been introduced by some of your Democratic colleagues. You know, it's kind of a whole long list of stuff. We could go on, but they've talked about, I think the latest I saw would be a special extra tax on capital gains, a change in the estate tax, lowering the thresholds there. Is a whole lot of stuff that would frankly just drive a lot of people out of the state.
It would.
I don't know that the liquor tax is another one that I've seen proposal for. I don't know that it drives you out of the state. It maybe drive you into Delaware to buy liquor, or into Virginia to drive, or Pennsylvania. But obviously we've seen some changes that way. But you're absolutely right that the potential for tax increases is much greater if it weren't for the governor. Could you talk a little bit about there's the digital tax? That's one of the areas that is coming up from override. What are the prospects on that? Maybe you can explain that a little bit. This is on digital advertising, of course.
Yeah, there were two different bills. One was digital advertising. One was on our use of like Netflix, and I'm not sure if those are the same bill or if they're different. But certainly that was a bill that passed last year.
Right.
That I was really thankful to have Governor Hogan veto that bill. It was going to cost us a lot. Let me just talk about the Netflix bill. You know,
Sure.
if you have Disney Plus, Netflix, any of these, you're going to be taxed in addition to the taxes that you're already paying for having your cable to begin with. It just doesn't make sense. It's totally double taxation. And I'm really thankful for the governor's veto. I'm hoping that we sustain it. But again, I'm not seeing some good news out of the state Senate right now.
So you'll have to be making that case between now, I guess you're saying, are you doing all the veto overrides in February? So we have a little bit of time there to make that case.
Yeah, so the House, we're not even going back in session until February 8th. Now, they passed a special rule so that we're actually having things occur. So they need to have a first reader that has to happen in front of session. That's when the bill is first introduced and assigned to a committee. Those first readers are occurring. They changed the rules so that only a very select number of people have to be in the chamber at that time. So really until February 8th, there's no real action going to be happening in the House as far as the full House. Now, there's a lot of action happening in the committees. That's where a lot of action is happening right now. A lot of the bills were filed early this year, and so they're getting those moving forward very quickly in the committee. So if February 8th is when we're back, and that's where we're going to hear those veto overrides.
So let's go back to the work that you're seeing in committee. So tell me what should we be taking a look at from your committee?
Sure. Well, I'm on Environmental and Transportation Committee. There have been some bills already. I know you're interested, Mark, in the I-270 project.
Right.
And Montgomery County delegates have come forward and with different plans, basically to block that whole project. There won't be any widening of I-270, no widening of I-495. They think it's fine the way it is. I completely disagree. It's a total mess. It's one of the worst congestion areas in the entire country. Needs action now. But that's one that several delegates in Montgomery County are trying to block the widening. Thankfully, Governor Hogan is trying as fast as he can to move it forward, and it needs to move forward. Another one, of course, I'm in environmental and transportation. So on the environment side, just today I heard about people who want to block having asphalt going onto your driveway to make it much more expensive than it is right now because they're going to block certain ingredients. And so when you go to Lowe's, a lot of things that you can buy right now, you wouldn't be allowed to buy if they were to pass this bill. Of course, the balloon bill is coming back this year where they're going to ban balloons so they get freed. You're going to find the little kid who let the balloon go. And of course, more heavy fines if they're larger balloons. So there are a lot of bills that are being heard right now in environmental and transportation. And there are a lot of threats. I don't know if you like using a straw or not, but I do. I like going to McDonald's and using a straw, plastic straw. And they want to outlaw that in Maryland and make us use those crumbly paper straws that just fall apart. It's terrible. Anyway, that's going to happen again this year. They're going to put that bill forward. Hopefully we're able to stop it again.
You seem to have a lot of the nanny state bills in your committee.
Yes. Well, it's unfortunate. Our legislature has shifted so far to the left. I think almost every committee has a lot of these nanny state bills because the Democrats, these liberals, are coming in and they want the nanny state in any way they can do it. I can think of several different committees that have these same type of bills that would really just impede our freedoms in this state. And that's why I'm thankful for the Maryland Federation of Republican Women. I'm thankful for your group, thankful for Republicans across the state, and anyone else with common sense that joins us to say, hey, this doesn't make sense. We need to be able to maintain our freedoms. We need to be able to maintain some order and moving forward. We don't need to have everything that we earn get taxed more and more and more. Like you mentioned, the liquor tax. I've had many people come to me, especially in the past when they raised the tax last time. They don't even really know about it this time yet. They came forward and said, if you raise this, we're going to either A, go out of business or you lose a lot of business. And I've talked to them afterwards, and they have lost a lot of business. I'm in Washington County, and so it's very easy for people to go to Pennsylvania, West Virginia, or Virginia to get their liquor, and they are. There's a bar that serves, obviously, alcoholic beverages, and a lot of people at Shepherd College used to come up. It's Captain Bender's right there in Sharpsburg. If you're there, you can go there. It's a nice place. But they used to come there from the college, and now not nearly as much because they just stay in West Virginia where the taxes are lower. And if we raise it more, then we're going to see more of that type of action. People, like you mentioned, Delaware, people are going to go to other states and not come to Maryland. I just spoke to another delegate who owns a tavern on the Eastern Shore, and he testified just the other day that a lot of people, because of the last tax, aren't going to his place, but they're going to Delaware, even though it's way inside of Maryland. So it does have these effects that, unfortunately, a lot of the Democrats just don't even seem to care about. They don't care about businesses. They think, well, you'll just make it work. But unfortunately, a lot of businesses You get to a certain point, you just can't make it work anymore. And then we can't hire people, and then businesses go to other states.
Well, when you layer COVID on top of that and
Right.
all the restrictions for seating and even being open that they've run into, to tax them more is to drive just another nail in the coffin.
That's right. Yeah,
Um,
now is not the time at all to even be thinking about an alcohol tax or any other kind of tax. And again, Governor Hogan has been saying that over the last couple of weeks. He said now is not the time to raise taxes on Marylanders. You want to talk about it maybe a couple of years or maybe next year, but not right now. We're still in the middle of COVID. We're not done. The vaccines are starting to come out and it's starting to roll, but we're still going to have this COVID with us. They're predicting until the summer or maybe even the fall. So to raise those taxes now just doesn't make sense.
And a lot of these proposals are really front and center aimed that we've been just talking about are aimed at or have the impact on the hospitality industry that has been so hard hit that even as COVID recedes down the road, it's going to take a while for people to get used to going back out to eat again.
That's right.
And obviously there are a lot of jobs that are at stake for that.
Yeah. Just while you guys were talking and you were telling us about all these things, I did a real quick search, a lovely little device, about the Senate's veto overrides. And apparently, from when I looked, they did 15 bills on Friday. But Kerwin was not part of it, that they're holding off on Kerwin. They're holding off, Senator Ferguson said they're holding off on the bills that have a higher fiscal impact until a little bit later. So that's reassuring. I wanted to ask you, what are you hearing about redistricting? The other big topic for this
Yes.
session.
Well, I have a little interest in redistricting, having run for Congress last time, looking at it for this next time. Governor Hogan just did what I thought he was going to do. He put together a nonpartisan committee that's going to draw the lines. Now, every year that he's been in office, he's introduced a bill to say we need a nonpartisan commission that will draw the lines. Now, that bill never passed, but he's still right now going with a nonpartisan commission. And believe me, it really is nonpartisan. He's got in charge of it a Democrat, an unaffiliated voter, and a Republican, and it's going to be filled out with 3 unaffiliated voters, 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans. A lot of rules. They couldn't have held office. If anyone is interested who's listening right now, you can apply to be one of those folks to try and redistrict the state. Now, that is going to be very positive. They're going to come up with a map. I think a map that looks so much better. I mean, it's hard to get any worse than the last map. It was just a disaster. So the worst gerrymandering in the entire country. Hit the state courts, the federal courts. It's awful. His map is going to look very good. It's going to respect, he's already said it, it's going to respect political boundaries, geographical boundaries. It's going to, of course, have the equal population. And there are a couple other things that he's going to make sure that map, those are the rules that the map makers are going to have to make. They're not going to be allowed to look at who's in which district.
Current office holders and political
Correct.
party registration, which is very, very important. I'm sorry I stepped on you. Go ahead.
No, Diana, that's great. No, this is a big topic, so I appreciate it. And you can't have changed parties within the last couple of years if you're looking forward to doing this. So some protections are in place. He's going to come up with a map that's fair across the whole state. Then it has to go to the legislature. And the legislature, as we've talked about, there's an overwhelming majority of Democrats in the House and in the state Senate. They can pass their own map. And if their map passes, then Governor Hogan's map just goes away. Now, my understanding is that Governor Hogan can veto their map. And if he vetoes their map, they're going to have to override his veto, which they have the numbers to do that. But I think the Governor Hogan's map is going to be so good, and now I'm talking Congress, it's going to be so good that it's going to be hard for them to overturn it and come up with a different map, especially one that looks like a disaster like the last one. So I think no matter what, we're going to have a better congressional map. Now, there are easier games to play for the state maps. I think Governor Hogan and this nonpartisan team, again, are going to have good rules. And with the good rules, they're going to come up with good maps. They're even looking at single member districts only across the whole state. That's a huge improvement. Unfortunately, the Democrats, they really don't want that. And I think it's going to be hard at the state level for the governor's map to stick. Although if they change it, they will pay a price. every single state senator, every single delegate, they're all up for election in 2022. And this map will be drawn in 2022. It'll be fresh on everyone's mind. And the governor will be able to make hay with any changes that they would do to his map. That's a fair map drawn by a nonpartisan commission. So I think that we have a lot more risk at the delegate and the state Senate level to have that map overturned by the legislature. And there's probably a lot more reason for them to overturn it because they really are afraid of single member districts. Just think about it, Montgomery County. If you had single member districts, we would actually have some Republicans representing parts of Montgomery County. And if we didn't, we'd at least have a chance to. There'd be a really competitive race rather than right now, you've got all 3 member districts where they just gang up on anybody who's a potential threat. So
it's interesting. There's another dynamic too, which is that fits into is a potential for a state level court challenge in addition to possible federal challenge. The federal, without getting into that, is a little weaker right now. But the possibility for a state challenge is how shall I say, is sort of the club in the closet that would keep, hopefully, serve as a disincentive to a particularly egregious map that would come as a Democratic replacement or a legislative replacement. And the advantage of a particularly fair, this process that you've already described, this nonpartisan process that's tried to that the governor is promoting with the commission, gives a court a potential alternative to say, well, we don't like this map because it runs afoul the way the one 10 years ago did, but it gives them an alternative to pick, which is one of the challenges with the courts is they don't want to have to draw maps either. So they really need something that is markedly better. So that could be another angle, and it could be an angle that sort of, how shall I say, keeps the legislature honest.
One hopes.
One hopes. A little bit honest.
Well, and Mark, you bring a great point because in the year 2000s, when they did that map, so it would have been 2002 when they drew the map, that was challenged in court, and that was defeated in the court. So it was a big Democrat map. The court said, no, you've gone too far. They redrew it on their own, and then that was the map. It upset the apple cart. Actually, Leroy Myers out here in Western Maryland, he wasn't planning to run against the Speaker of the House, Cass Taylor. He had a much easier race that he was trying to run in, but they changed the map. He ended up in Cass Taylor's district and said, well, I'm going to keep on running. And he kept on running. He won. So it was a great victory. But you're right. There's a precedent right here that maps can be overturned and have been overturned in the state courts. And you're totally right. They need to be very careful. Hopefully they'll stick with the governor's map. That would be the most safe thing to do. Yeah. But if they don't, they can't go too far.
We'll try. Now, there's some other issues to talk about, too. I know police reform. I know that's not on your committee, but that is something that has gotten a lot of attention. And some of the discussion is in repealing the Police Officers' Bill of Rights and some other reforms relative to, or changes, I should say, relative to responding to some of the concerns. I realize it's early days and not in your committee, but what are you hearing on that?
Now, Mark, going into session, that was one of my biggest concerns. We need to respect the police. We need to honor the police. We need to protect our police, and they need to be able to be free to act as police need to act. And a lot of the bills that we're starting to see, people might not like this, but it's bringing the city of Baltimore policies statewide. And let me talk about the city of Baltimore policies. We had Freddie Gray and the riots. And if you remember, the mayor of the city of Baltimore said, hey, we're going to hold back and let them get their energy out, which is completely wrong. If you ever studied anything about riots, you don't do that. You squash it right away. But that was her approach. So then it was Governor Hogan who had to come in with the National Guard and restore order to the city of Baltimore. But let me tell you, the city of Baltimore has never been the same since that time. Because what's happened, immediately, Attorney General Mosby came in and accused the policemen who were involved of misconduct. She was ready to throw them in jail. They were all acquitted, all found totally innocent. But now the police know you can't step out too far, because if you do, the city doesn't have your back. So what have been the results? The results now have been that the city of Baltimore has had the highest murder rate than it's ever had for the last about 2.5 years. And that's a direct result of the police not doing the policing they need to do to keep order in the city of Baltimore. So who's getting hurt? It's actually the people who live in the city of Baltimore that are really getting hurt because the police have been pulled back. Not so much the police, but now they want to take these policies that are in the city of Baltimore, apply them statewide. And that would affect all of us all across the state. And it would increase crime. It's a disaster waiting to happen. You're also going to see some of the best policemen leave the force and go to some other state where they're treated better if we don't defeat some of these bills that are coming forward. And, we don't have to look beyond just this last year. The Oregon police force is a disaster, especially Portland. People are just leaving. Their whole thing is falling apart. Why? Because they knew they weren't being defended. Thankfully, the mayor has changed his tune in the last month, but the damage is done. And if we put these things into law in Maryland, we're going to create a lot of damage, not only to the police force again, but to regular citizens and the crime rate all across the state.
Unfortunately, 3 of the bills that the Senate overrode were part of the crime-related bills. SB 907, SB 929, and SB 708 were 3 of the ones that they've already overridden. So
Right.
You guys are just going to have to hold tough on your side, which
Well,
is not likely to happen, but it's a nice thought.
Well, we will try. You'll have probably at least 40 votes against
Yes.
these overrides, because we see how problematic they are. But Mark, you mentioned removing the police bill of rights, to protect the police. That's serious. They do plan to do that this year, and I would be surprised if we don't get out of session and they have passed that bill. Governor Hogan's going to have to come in and veto it, and then we have to try and somehow sustain that veto next year. But hopefully by next year, the fever pitch of the police are horrible will have died down, and we'll bring some common sense again back, and those vetoes could be sustained.
Now, speaking of common sense, obviously we had a huge change in the way our elections were conducted because of COVID.
Yeah.
And there have been a number of proposals to institutionalize some of those changes and to potentially conduct the elections with a good deal less of the kinds of controls that there used to be in place or have been in place prior to the most recent election. So what are you hearing about that, and what should we be worried about?
Well, it's interesting. Just last year, the legislature changed absentee balloting. They changed the name. They had actually in the previous years already changed that you didn't have to have an excuse to get an absentee ballot. But this last year, they actually changed the name and they call it a vote by mail ballot. And what we saw this last year is that in the primaries, they just mailed everybody a ballot. Now, that was, in my mind, completely illegal. The legislature is the one who should have allowed that to happen. And if you look nationally, that's part of the bigger argument, is that Pennsylvania, the same thing happened that should have never happened in Pennsylvania. Not only is it not the way to vote, but it's also not secure in any way. You can just grab those ballots, you can harvest them, pay people to vote certain ways. I mean, it's just a disaster. But it's vote by mail. So that's already been institutionalized in Maryland. And now this year, they're going to want to take that a little bit further. I am putting in a bill to say that if you do vote by mail, then their signatures have to be reviewed. They were not reviewed at all this last year. But my bill will say that it needs to be reviewed. And if there are questions about a ballot, then you have to contact the person who sent in that ballot, the Board of Elections would, and give them a chance to actually vote. But those will become provisional ballots. They're questioned. It's not the signature. And if you know, when my daughter and I, we went to Pennsylvania, it was Philadelphia right after the elections, national elections, and looked at several of the provisional ballots there. We spent all day looking at provisional ballots. And she and I both saw several, because you saw the actual signature when they registered to vote, and you compared it with the signature that people voted. The vast majority of the time, those things matched. But about 1%, you could see they were totally not the same person. There was no way. And that's the kind of thing that needs to be caught and would be caught with this bill. So that's on the positive side. There are other Republicans who have other great ideas trying to protect the voter integrity of the elections. In the past, I introduced bills to mandate that we would have voter ID when you went to go vote. Great idea, great bill. Virginia did it. I saw them than doing that when I was campaigning. Unfortunately, they lost the state Senate because my candidate lost. But I was volunteering and helping him. And I went inside. I was actually shocked. I was like, wait a minute. Everybody's got their IDs out. It's so smooth. Like, think about how much quicker it is. You just show them an ID and you go vote. You don't have to answer all these questions. Much easier. But anyway, I'm not introducing that one again this year. Hopefully someone else will. I'm going to try and get a signature validation bill to go forward.
That'd be very important to get through.
That's very, very helpful. So we've talked a list of Parade of Horribles. Have we missed some of the other stuff that we should be talking about?
Mark, there's so much.
No pressure. We only have a few minutes to summarize all the.
Yeah. You know, there is so much to watch out for this year at the state level. And then obviously at the national level, we're seeing things already being introduced right now. You've probably seen Facebook. If you guys are on Facebook, people are posting, hey, you know, the gasoline prices are this today. What are they going to be? It's not long until they're $3 a gallon based on some of the policy decisions that the Biden administration is already making. You know, blocking the Keystone pipeline, joining the Paris Accords. I mean, these things are going to hurt us as being an individualist country. We're going to have to rely again on other people to get our oil. Anyway, that's at the national level. At the state level, a lot of these same policies are coming forward. You know, and in my environmental committee, we're seeing a lot of these types of bills that are saying, again, restricting our freedoms and saying you need to act this way or that way, really for pet projects. And we're seeing that in committees all across the legislature. You mentioned the police Bill of Rights. That's going to be huge. You mentioned taxes, fee increases. That's going to be huge. We're going to see a lot of those bills this year. You mentioned voters. We're going to see a lot of these bills that are going to try to have mail-in voting be just the normal way that we always do things, and we just mail people their votes without any kind of checks or balances. It's going to be a tough session. There are a lot of challenges that are going to happen. Of course, Kerwin Commission and other other spending increases. You know, it's interesting too, just in the last election, it was on the ballot whether it was one of those constitutional amendments, whether the legislature could basically just ignore the governor's budget and move money around any way it wanted. And unfortunately that passed. And as a result, you're going to see a lot of finagling and playing with the governor's budget this year, where they're just going to take the money and throw it other places. Unfortunately, that hurt us to be able to stay on the right course, because the legislature can now just play around with all the money. And what you're going to see too is that the leadership in the legislature can then use that to kind of blackmail members and say, well, look, if you don't do this, you know, that project Governor Hogan has in your district, we're taking it and we're going to throw it to the city of Baltimore unless you do this thing over here. Again, that was terrible. I wish we could have let people know more about the effects of that amendment, but it was just complicated, hard to let people know that.
You know,
well, go ahead.
I was going to say real quickly, this would be a topic for another episode maybe, but I would think it'd be very interesting to see the difference in the House and Senate post Miller and Bush. I mean, we had last year, we had the new leadership in place last year, but you know, Senator Mike Miller was still around. Now, with both of them gone, of the Steny Hoyer, Mike Miller, Mike Bush triumvirate of power, we only have Steny left. So, you know, how does the future look other than more liberal, as you were pointing out? But that might be another topic for you, Mark.
Well, we'll have to. You know, this has been just too depressing for Neil, so we're gonna have to cut off. We will say that the good news is you will still be having Red Scarf Day.
Yes.
So you'll have that to look forward to. It'll be a little different. Obviously, you can't go in person, but you will be zooming in, so you'll get some support from that, and I'm sure you appreciate it when that happens.
And again, if there's anything we can do to help you, either, you know, the Republican Club or the Federation, please make sure, Neil, that you reach out to us and let us know where you need us.
And we look forward to getting that video, that link we'll share with folks to learn, to help better understand what the process is to testify.
Hey, Mark,
Diana, go ahead. Sorry.
Just real quick on the positive side, we did touch on one positive thing, and that is redistricting. Governor Hogan is the governor. He is going to draw those maps. Now, literally, he's not. He set up a nonpartisan commission. But let me tell you, a nonpartisan commission drawing these maps is so much better than having the Democrat legislature with a Democrat governor just scheming behind closed doors with special maps and coming up with these maps just to favor their party in any way they can. So it's going to be positive. We're going to have better maps 2 years from now. That's going to help us to get more state senators that are Republicans, more delegates that are Republicans, and we should pick up at least one congressional seat.
I like your optimism, Neil.
Thank you.
We like that. That's a great note to end on. Diana, thank you very much for joining me tonight. Neil, thank you for being our
Thank you,
guest
Mark.
as well.